It is today, Thursday, January 22, 2026, and the news has just broken. I mean, it is landing like a seismic shockwave right across Europe and Washington. Donald Trump has declared that a peace agreement to end the war in Ukraine is reasonably close.
Reasonably close.
Yes, he says it now hinges on just one issue. But look, the real story is what's happening right now, at this very moment. Trump's envoys have just departed for Moscow for a high-stakes, face-to-face meeting with Vladimir Putin.
A meeting that could literally redraw the map of Europe.
Exactly. So before we dive into the rabbit hole of what this all means, I have a massive request. If you care about the future of Ukraine, if you care about European stability, and you want to stay ahead of all the spin, please subscribe to Defense Reports. It's your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. You really don't want to miss what's coming next. I'm Alex, joining with Arya in the latest Deep Dive by Defense Report for a sharp, no-nonsense breakdown of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today we're going to cover, well, this aggressive shift from, traditional diplomacy to what I can only describe as transactional peace.
Yeah, we're talking about the unveiling of the controversial Board of Peace and these frantic diplomatic maneuvers happening between Davos and Moscow as we speak.
It is a pivotal day.
It's maybe one of the most surreal days in modern diplomatic history. We're watching the standard rulebook of international relations just being shredded in real time.
Surreal is absolutely the right word, because when you start to look at the details, the actual details coming out of these meetings, it feels less like a peace negotiation and more like a hostile corporate takeover. We've got a U.S. envoy who was secretly caught on tape coaching, that's the word being used, coaching Russian officials on how to manipulate the White House.
And we have this Board of Peace membership fee.
Right. And you are not going to believe this, but the president is reportedly charging world leaders $1 billion for a seat at the table.
And Putin's counteroffer is maybe even more audacious. He's offering to pay the fee, but with money that doesn't technically belong to him.
Exactly. And just when you think it can't get any more chaotic, there's a Greenland distraction. NATO is suddenly worried about an infinite deal for an island while a major ground war is raging in Europe.
It's a massive amount of noise, but our mission today is to cut through it. We're analyzing a singular moment in history. We should probably call it the January 2026 diplomatic inflection. Because the fate of Ukraine is being negotiated right now, but not by generals or seasoned diplomats. It's being negotiated by real estate developers using strategies they learned in Manhattan boardrooms.
So let's unpack that. We have to start with the movement today. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are in Moscow. They're meeting Putin. Trump says the deal is close, but looking at Witkoff's background, he isn't a diplomat, is he?
No, not in any traditional sense, and that distinction is everything.
Yeah.
Steve Witkoff is a real estate developer and a longtime friend of the president. And look, this isn't just trivia. It is crucial to understanding what's happening.
Okay.
The sources we have, including some very sharp analysis from Diane Francis, point out that Witkoff is applying a very specific real estate tactic here. It's called the anchoring strategy.
Anchoring strategy. I've heard of this in sales, but break that down. How does that apply to a war zone?
Well, think of it like this. In real estate, if you want to buy a building that's worth $1 million, you don't offer $900,000. You offer $200,000. You start with a position that is wildly unreasonable, insultingly low even. The goal is to shift the entire window of what's possible. You shock the other side so much that when you finally settle on a low number, say $500,000, they feel like they've won something, even though they've been completely fleeced.
So if you apply that to Ukraine, Witkoff is coming in with a proposal that is so heavily skewed toward Russia that any tiny concession he gets from them looks like a huge victory for Kyiv.
Precisely. According to the reports, Witkoff has been pushing a plan that includes a wish list of 28 points, many of which come directly from Russian demands. It creates a starting position that is just devastating for Ukrainian sovereignty.
So the idea is to anchor the whole negotiation so far in Russia's favor, that simply existing as a country is framed as a win for Zelensky.
That's the fear. And this isn't just us reading between the lines. There were leaked tapes, right?
Yeah.
That's where this gets really concerning and honestly pretty scandalous. Bloomberg obtained tapes where Witkoff was actually heard coaching Russian officials. He wasn't just mediating.
He was acting like a consultant for the other side.
Exactly. He was urging them to compile this 28-point wish list specifically to grab Trump's attention. He basically told them, here is how you sell this to the boss.
That is incredible. A U.S. envoy representing the supposed leader of the free world, coaching the adversary, an adversary that's currently bombing civilians on how to manipulate a negotiation against a U.S. ally.
It connects to a quote from Witkoff that really sticks out. In one of these leaked calls, he was discussing the terms of peace Donetsk, Luhansk, and he said, quote, maybe a land swap somewhere.
A land swap somewhere.
He spoke about sovereign Ukrainian territory where people live and die as if it were a real estate chip being traded over cigars at Mar-a-Lago.
It just strips the humanity, the morality right out of it. We're talking about the freedom of millions of people, and it's being treated like air rights on a Manhattan skyscraper. And I noticed something else in these reports. What about Keith Kellogg? He was the military expert, the former envoy. Where is he in all this?
He's been sidelined. The sources indicate that Kellogg was excluded from these Kremlin talks, and specifically at Russia's request.
Wow.
So when you remove the military strategist and you replace him with the real estate developer, you are sending a very clear signal.
This isn't about security anymore.
No, it's a business transaction.
Which brings us to the biggest business transaction of them all, this Board of Peace. Trump announced it on January 15th, just a week ago. Even the name sounds like something out of a corporate satire.
It's a fascinating, if alarming, development. The Board of Peace is being pitched as this alternative to the United Nations. Trump has stated very clearly that the UN never helped me. So naturally, he's building his own club.
But it's not just a club, is it? It's a pay-to-play club.
Correct. The structure that's been outlined describes an organization where Donald Trump is chairman for life with veto power. And to get a permanent seat on this board, the reported entry fee is $1 billion.
$1 billion to buy influence in global affairs.
It sets a precedent where international standing is just bought. It's not earned through diplomacy or values. It is the monetization of geopolitical influence. But here's the twist you mentioned earlier. Vladimir Putin has been invited, and reports suggest he is willing to pay the fee.
Okay, but hold on. Russia's economy is sanctioned to the ground. Their assets were frozen. How does he physically pay $1 billion to the U.S. president's new board?
This is the aha moment. This is where the art of the deal meets the art of war. Putin has suggested using the frozen Russian assets currently held by the West to pay for his seat.
Wait, let me get this straight. He wants to take the money that the West froze because of his illegal invasion and use that specific money to buy a seat on an American-led peace board.
Precisely. It's a masterstroke of cynical irony. He is essentially saying, I will use your own financial leverage against you to buy legitimacy in your new system. He's offering to fund the new order with the penalties from the old one.
That's mind-boggling. It's essentially making the West pay for his seat at the table. I'm assuming the rest of the world, especially our allies in Europe, aren't exactly thrilled about this.
Not thrilled is a huge understatement. There's been a massive recoil from Europe. France, the UK, Norway, Sweden. They've all either declined or expressed grave concern. Critics are calling it a vanity project.
An imperial court.
Right. It fundamentally undermines the whole idea of a rules-based order. If you can just buy your way out of being a pariah, then international law means absolutely nothing. It just means might and money makes right.
And while this high-stakes auction is going on, we have to look at the reality on the ground. President Zelensky is in Davos today, or he's heading there to meet Trump. What is the atmosphere like for him right now? Because while they're talking about billion-dollar fees, his people are freezing.
It is dire, and we absolutely cannot lose sight of the human cost here. It is deep winter in Ukraine. Kiev is facing freezing conditions because of these relentless Russian strikes on energy infrastructure. Trump himself mentioned that last month, 29,000 people died.
29,000 people, that's a staggering number. It's nearly 1,000 people a day.
It's horrific.
Yeah.
And in that context, Zelensky is being put in a vice grip. The plan being pushed by Witkoff and the Russian envoy, Kirill Dmitriev, demands massive concessions. We're talking about land swaps, a significantly reduced army, essentially stripping Ukraine of its ability to defend itself in the future.
So Zelensky is facing a choice between losing dignity or losing a major partner.
Exactly. If he refuses this deal, Trump threatens to cut support.
Trump has already said, quote, if they don't agree, they're stupid. He is framing it as if Zelensky is the one being an obstructionist.
The narrative being spun is that the victim of the invasion, the country defending its own homes, is the one holding up peace because they won't agree to the aggressor's terms.
It feels like such a calculated pressure campaign. Zelensky is freezing in Kyiv, fighting for his country's survival, while the US president is calling him stupid for not signing away territory in a deal brokered by a real estate developer.
And that pressure is entirely weighted on Kiev. I mean, Trump has theoretically threatened to arm Ukraine if Russia refuses. But right now, all the diplomatic muscle, all the coaching, all the public statements are being used to force Ukraine to the table on Russian terms.
It's a total abandonment of the principle of nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine.
It is.
And just to add another layer of absurdity to this, and I really struggle to wrap my head around this one, we have to talk about Greenland. I saw the headlines and thought it was a joke, but it's dominating the news right alongside the war.
It is not a joke, and it is actually quite dangerous. Trump has renewed his interest in right, title, and ownership of Greenland. He's calling it an infinite deal.
But why is this coming up now? Why is an island in the Arctic relevant to a land war in Eastern Europe?
Because it's being weaponized, it's leverage. Trump is threatening 200% tariffs on European wines and goods, specifically targeting countries like France, if they don't join his board of peace or help facilitate this Greenland deal.
So it's a shakedown. Sell me your island, or I destroy your wine industry.
Essentially, yes. The NATO Secretary General, Mark Rutte, is trying desperately to keep the focus on Ukraine. He's pleading Ukraine first, then Greenland. But the alliance is fracturing under this pressure. While European leaders are trying to stop a massive Russian army on their eastern flank, they're being distracted by a trade war over an island in the north.
It's a classic distraction strategy. It feels like throwing a smoke bomb into a crowded room.
It creates chaos. It sucks all the oxygen out of the room. Every minute spent discussing tariffs and Greenland is a minute not spent on the security architecture of Europe, which is being dismantled in Moscow right now. It keeps the allies off balance so they can't present a united front for Ukraine.
But surely not everyone is just rolling over. We are seeing some resistance from true allies, right?
We are. And this is either a glimmer of hope or maybe desperation. It's being called the Coalition of the Willing. The UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and other European leaders are not accepting this Board of Peace framework. They formed a coalition proposing to deploy over 10,000 European peacekeeping troops to Ukraine.
That's a huge commitment. 10,000 boots on the ground. That changes the calculus completely.
It's a serious measure. The idea is to guarantee security on the ground if the U.S. pivots to what they're calling a fake peace. They realize that if the American security guarantee just evaporates, Europe has to step in physically. They know that if Ukraine falls, the threat moves that much closer to Berlin, Paris, and London.
Diane Francis, in one of our sources, she had a very sharp take on this whole thing. She argued that history is being written by fools and amateurs, referring to these envoys.
She did, and she's right to be harsh. Her point is that Ukraine is not a strip mall to be sold off. You can't apply transactional real estate logic to national survival. The fear, and it is a very rational fear, is that this peace being discussed in Moscow is just a pause.
Just a chance for Russia to rearm.
To regroup and finish the job later. And the reality on the ground supports that fear. The war is still raging, Russia is still attacking. They're not acting like a country seeking peace, they're acting like a country seeking capitulation.
That's the disconnect. We have this diplomatic track moving at warp speed toward a deal driven by fees and photo ops, and a military track where Russia is just grinding forward, killing civilians.
So the deal might just be a way to lock in those gains before the Russian economy collapses or their military runs out of steam. It rescues the aggressor at the expense of the victim.
It's terrifying to think about. We're watching a restructuring of the world order in real time, and it's not being built on justice.
If you step back and look at the bigger picture, this day, January 22nd, 2026, might be remembered as the day the rules changed forever. We could be moving from a world based on international law, however imperfect that was, to a world based on auctions.
An auction-based world order, that chills me to the bone.
Yeah. It's a world where sovereignty is just another asset class. If you have the money or the leverage, the frozen assets, you can buy a seat, you can buy a pardon, or you can buy a neighbor.
So what does all this mean for you listening right now? Why should you care about a meeting in Moscow or a board in Davos if you aren't in Ukraine?
Because it sets a precedent for everything.
Yeah.
If Ukraine is forced to trade land for a temporary peace because a deal maker decided it was the quickest way to close the transaction, then no democracy is safe. It tells every dictator in the world that if they hold out long enough, the West will eventually sell out their victim for $1 billion entry fee.
And it signals that the United States is no longer the guarantor of freedom, but the broker of the sale.
Precisely. This coalition of the willing Europe's last stand is trying to hold the line. They're trying to defend the very concept of sovereignty. But without American backing, it's a very fragile line.
It is a lot to process. We've got a real estate developer in Moscow trading land for peace. We have a president selling seats on a global board for $1 billion. And we have Ukraine fighting for its life in the freezing cold, trying to navigate a world where its dignity is being weighed against its survival.
It is surreal,
Yeah.
but it is the reality of 2026. And the people of Ukraine are the ones paying the price for this new reality.
We want to leave you with a thought today. If international law is truly being replaced by deal making and sovereignty is treated like real estate, what happens when the next dictator decides they want to buy a neighbor? Is this the end of the war, or is this just the start of a new, terrifying global marketplace where freedom is sold to the highest bidder? You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Aria, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry. And before you go, make sure you subscribe to Defense Reports. It is your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.